to The Debrief, where we talk with the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the headlines they're covering this week and where the story's going next. I'm Sarah Westwood, and I'm here with Editor-in-Chief Hugo Gurdon. And Hugo, you wrote a column this week about Donald Trump's presidential bid, his launch of it last month, and you made a really interesting point about how Trump's shtick really worked back in 2015 when it was backed by substantive and novel policies that he had exclusive ownership to. Explain that dynamic and whether that's still the case.
Well, it seems to me that Trump now is regarded as yesterday's man. When he arrived on the scene in 2015, he was shocking to a lot of people, perhaps and exciting to a lot of other people. But he was new. Now we're 7 years later, and he's a bit like Hillary Clinton was back then. Everyone's bored with him. Everybody knows what his shtick is. Everybody's seen it before, and he was presenting policies back then, and indeed those policies were popular. I mean, and when he was in power, he very much tried to control the southern border and illegal immigration. He cut taxes. He appointed federal judges who were textualists and constitutionalists, and there was substance. Now he's no longer president, and there's a sense of him being played out. His launch was, of course, extremely lackluster, and people actually had to be stopped from leaving the room because they were bored. Mm-hmm. And there's this, as I say, there's a sense of him being played out, and there are a lot of people who the party has adopted a lot of his policies, so he no longer has exclusive claim to those policies. All he's got left is the sort of aggressiveness and the coarseness and the outrage. And one of the points that I make is that being repellent is not really a strategy. It's just what you're left with when you're in Trump's position.
Mm-hmm. One of the Republicans who have sort of followed in Trump's ideological footprints is Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. He's widely regarded as the front runner heading into the 2024 presidential primary season. You note, though, that one of the only foreseeable risks right now for DeSantis is that he's so popular that he could potentially peak too early.
Well, what I have in mind here, and I think that there's a lot of differences here, but I remember that back in 2015, Scott Walker of Wisconsin had been a very successful governor. He'd taken on the unions, he'd won. There was a lot of excitement about him, but it was the most hapless campaign that he ran. And he was out long before the primaries began. I think he was only in for a matter of a couple of months. Now, I don't expect that that's the way that DeSantis will be. I think that he is already a national figure. The latest Wall Street Journal poll shows that he has very wide name recognition, I think sort of 90% name recognition. And he hasn't put a foot wrong for the past 2 years in terms of gaining attention and favorable attention to himself, obviously unfavorable attention from the other side. But he's already ahead of Trump in surveys. Now, there's a long way to go, but in the latest Wall Street Journal poll, he's ahead by 14 points, which is 52 to 38. The day before, there was a USA Today poll where he was ahead by 23 points. So, he's already a sort of dramatically strong possibility and alternative to Trump. There is always a danger, as there was back in 2015, that there will be a big field and that, Trump can win primaries with 33% or 31% or whatever it may be. And it's in the interest of the Republican Party now to try and make sure that the field is not too big. And at the moment, things are tending that way, but it's still a long way. I mean, there's still 3 or 4 months before people will start emerging as candidates. But at the moment, it doesn't look like there are any really heavyweight candidates who are a challenge to DeSantis as the main challenger to Trump.
If you're DeSantis and you are perceived as the main challenger to Trump, at what point do you start to engage Trump directly? DeSantis so far has not really taken on Trump or responded to any of his barbs. At what point do you expect that to change?
Frankly, I would say that you do that as late as possible. DeSantis has pulled up to Trump and ahead of Trump by not being in a fight with Trump. He has nothing to gain, but he can't obviously not engage with Trump when inevitably Trump starts attacking him. I mean, Trump has already called DeSantis sanctimonious. It's perfectly clear that if DeSantis continues to be, as I expect he will, a serious challenger to Trump, Trump will go after him. It's certainly important for DeSantis not then to back away, but to stand his ground and hit back. I suspect that with the electorate largely bored with Trump and actually not, they showed in the last election, in the midterms, they did not support Trump candidates, and 2 years earlier they did not support him. They've had enough of Trump. I think DeSantis stands a very strong chance. He has to show himself to be the tough fighter, which is the way that he's presented himself over the past 2 years or more.
Well, Hugo, thank you so much for being here today. You can get more writing from Hugo and the rest of the commentary team at washingtonexaminer.com.